Hello there, I'm Elena and this is my channel Enough. Today I'm starting a new series of videos. It will be called USSR, The Evil Empire is Back. And this is the video number 1. In this video I will talk about some youth political organizations in USSR. It will be related to my next video about USSR propaganda and Russian propaganda, because they're using lots of tools of USSR propaganda, and that's what it will be about. So, first of all, why USSR was an evil empire? Probably for English-speaking people from Canada, US, or Europe, and free countries, I may don't have to explain that. I may have to explain it to Russians and Russian-speaking people, because many of them living for 20 to 30 years in foreign countries and they still watching Putin's propaganda and believe in everything he says. And many Russian people never knew the bad stuff about USSR. They thought USSR basically single-handedly win from Hitler in the World War II without any help. Unfortunately, this is not true, of course, as you know. And about the atrocities USSR did, they don't know either. And also they don't know, many of them don't know that USSR wasn't collapsed on its own because of its inefficient economy, and because of they was trying to compete with United States and some other countries in military spending and so on. They thinking that the USSR was destroyed by somebody, and they hated Gorbachev because they thought Gorbachev somehow destroyed the USSR, and a whole bunch of lies which they were fed since childhood. And about that childhood I will talk to you today. Pardon my English, hope you understand what I'm saying. I live 18 years in Canada, but as you can see I still have Russian accent, and my friends love it. My Canadian friends and English-speaking friends, but it may be difficult for you to understand. I hope you can understand me. I apologize. So I was born in 1970 in big city of Volgograd, which used to be Stalingrad during World War II. And soon enough my parents moved to Tuapse. It's on the Black Sea coast near Sochi, where the Olympic Games was. Recent Olympic Games of Russia hosted. And then my parents went to Siberia, believe it or not, voluntarily. At the time there was a big railroad was built there. It called BAM, Baikal-Amur mainline. And in about 1975, I'm 5 years old, me and my mom flew by helicopter to the place where my father worked. He was at the time allowed to bring family, because a little bit of the town was started to be built and there was places for families to live. My father came there in 1974, which there was nothing in there, and they had to build everything from scratch. And that's where they built a big railroad. Despite the common idea in the Western countries, Siberia it's not that cold, and yeah, it could be minus 42 to 45 Celsius in the winter, but in general it's very decent. And it could be even hot in summer, up to plus 30. So that's what about Siberia I can tell. Also I can say that at the time in USSR, Siberia was one of the more free-thinking places, because people were already in Siberia and they were always joking that if they do something wrong, they're already in Siberia. Government cannot send them further than that and put them in a prisoners camp somewhere else. Well, they were free people and they came there voluntarily. It was even considered an honor to be part of building that railroad, which basically because of brainwashing of people that, yeah, it's a good idea. Besides that, they were paid very well there, and they get lots of goods which regular Soviet people couldn't buy. Like, people could buy a car, for instance, but for that you have to stay in line for years and years, paying every month out of your salary to be able to eventually, years later, buy a car. This is how Soviet Union was operating. But this is not what I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to talk to you about young communist organizations. The organizations were, when you were in the first grades of school, which is about 7 years old, you become a part of a October children, as they called at the time. They used to wear in a pin, like a star with a portrait of child Lenin on it. And for that you're supposed to be a good student and be active in your class, in some political ways as well. The second organization which you could become part of was called Pioneers. It's kind of like scouts. They was wearing red scarves, triangle looking, and which was 3 corners of the triangle represented communists and pioneers, and the Komsomol. It was Young Communist League. These were the political organizations which basically all the children was part of. And so am I, as a good student and a school child at the time. All of us were heavily brainwashed from childhood. We had the political information class every week, which teachers were explaining us what's happening in the world, reading out of the newspapers, all controlled by the government, and explaining that USSR is the greatest country in the world and we have to be proud of that we live there, and everybody else is not lucky because they're not living in USSR, and in every political event USSR is always right and everybody else is always wrong who is disagree with USSR. And we're supposed to look at every political thing, at every even book, movie, or anything, even music, from political USSR point of view. When we become pioneers, which was older, like we were about, I don't know, 9 or so, and we were given an oath, which we're supposed to obey the laws of Communist Party and live by the laws of Communist Party of USSR, which was the only party in the country, and we believed, why do we need more parties? Because we have such a great party as Communist Party of USSR, KPSS. So, and again, we were working with marching with the drums and bugles and so on. But it's nothing to compare what's happening now in Russia. Now they rebuilding those pioneers because they need to brainwash children, and they're using it in almost Hitler-Jugend way. It was way beyond what USSR ever done. So this is the why I said that USSR is back. It's not just why. USSR is back in many ways. Modern day Russia and Putin, for last all the time he was in power, for like what, 20 something, 23 years, he used Russian propaganda heavily. And Soviet propaganda, I mean Russia, modern day Russia using Soviet propaganda. And this is how it is. And I was part of those people who were brainwashed. That is why I know what it is like. Many people, I can see the experts on TV and some young people talking about it. They read about it in the books, they watched it in the movies, but they weren't exposed to it by themselves. I was. And that is why I think my opinion could be interesting and valid to any of you. So far, what right now I'm saying, it's my own experience. About the you're welcome to Google Soviet organizations, and you will find out more about pioneers and about October children, or Octobriata it called. Or future next step from pioneers was Young Communist League, Komsomol it called. And after that they were supposed to, kind of supposed to become members of Communist Party. And of course, every time you join Young Communist League, you also give an oath, and you also swear your allegiance to Communist Party of USSR. And every time it's more and more heavy brainwashing, because pioneers and the Komsomol people, children, they were always, and so is members of Communist Party of USSR, they always had a party meeting or pioneers meeting, and in those meetings they were also discussing their organization, what's happening with their organization. They were talking about their study, they were talking about politics, and they was talking about, they were even more brainwashed within each of these organizations. That is why nowadays, when Putin trying to say something to Russians or brainwash them in a certain way, it's very easy for him to do, because the ground for that is already prepared. Many people lived in USSR and they were very heavily brainwashed. Even in modern day Russia, they was trying to create something like, also kind of like in Hitler, Nazi Germany organizations. There was such a group of young people called Nashi, and they were kind of basically like young fascists, or it was beyond the Komsomol of USSR. It was basically a fascist organization. I'm not sure how much of it exists anymore, but they were really, it was very recent, and they were really acting like fascists, up to the point of beating up people who disagree with them and doing bad things, like collecting basically information of people who disagree with Putin and calling them traitors and preparing to attack them, to do something bad to these people. They creating lists of people who disagree with Putin. Why USSR is an empire of evil, I don't think I have to prove to you, or I presume you already know, but just one of the examples is basically the dissidents, people who wasn't agree with Soviet regime. Many of them ended up not even in jail, they ended up in psychiatric clinics. Healthy people were put in psychiatric clinics where they were treated with psychiatric drugs, heavy drugs, for people with psychos, like for people who have disease, psychosis of different, like schizophrenia or something. And they was on a heavy medication just because normal people cannot be against Soviet Union. Something must be wrong with them, they must be crazy. That's why they were treated there like crazy people. I personally use the word normal quite a bit. It means in my language, average person, not a psycho, not a lunatic. Average, regular person. That's why when I use the word normal, this is what it means. So anyways, this is what the information I experienced myself, and I'm gonna continue with that shortly. So far, this video is enough brainwashing. Enough. Thank you for your attention. This is my opinion, and you have your own opinion. My opinion based on facts and my own experience. Please verify the facts you base your opinion on. Thank you for your attention.